the gentleman from Florida mentioned the real scandal. Here's the real scandal. The IRS systematically targeted conservatives for exercising their First Amendment political speech rights. They did it in a systematic way, and they did it for a sustained period of time. They get caught. Lois Lerner gets caught, and she does what all kinds of people do when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. She lies about it. Isn't it true, Ms. Mitchell? She went to a Bar Association speech May 10th, 2013, planted a question from one of her friends, and said, wasn't me, it wasn't us, it was folks in Cincinnati. Isn't that true?
That's true, but it wasn't true.
Right, exactly.
She said it, but it wasn't true.
She said it, but it wasn't true. The fact show it was all in Washington. So she lies, and then when she gets caught lying, she does what happens sometimes. She's brought this committee room at that same table you're all sitting there, and she takes the fifth. So now here's what happened. The central figure lies when the story is first breaks. Then she takes the fifth. Now this sort of, any criminal investigation, any congressional investigation, there's a premium on getting the documents, information, emails, communications, all the stuff that went on. But when you have the central figure taking the fifth, it really emphasizes the need for the documents. So Mr. Koskinen is brought in. The president says he's the fixer. He's the professional guy brought in to fix this system and clean up the IRS. And under his watch, I think he breached every duty he had. Would you say, Ms. Mitchell, that he had a duty to preserve the documents that were there relevant to the congressional and criminal investigations that were going on?
He absolutely did. They were under subpoena from the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform in August of 2013, and they weren't produced. The subpoena was reissued in February of 2014, and he
Two subpoenas.
Two subpoenas, and not only that, but there was ongoing litigation with respect to as early as May of 2013, and my clients, and the Z Street case, which has been filed in 2010, and involved the very same factors and
two subpoenas
and documents.
Two subpoenas, three preservation orders. The IRS themselves, they sent a preservation order to themselves. They said preserve all documents. So Mr. Koskinen and his IRS had a duty to preserve all the documents. They had a duty to produce them to the committee because we subpoenaed them. And they had a duty to inform us if they couldn't preserve them or didn't preserve them and couldn't produce them. And so all three of those duties were breached when they allowed 400 backup tapes to be destroyed. Would you agree, Ms. Mitchell?
I agree, and I think that for that reason alone, but certainly for many others, I think that Commissioner Koskinen has lied to the Congress repeatedly, and he should be impeached and removed from office.
I didn't even got to that, but you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Duty to preserve, they failed that. Duty to produce documents, they failed that. Duty to inform us in a time. He knew that problems with Ms. Lerner's email or with her server and her emails, he knew about that and waited 4 months to tell us. He waited 4 months to tell us that some of the backup tapes had been destroyed. 400 backup tapes destroyed, potentially 24,000 emails, and he comes and testifies and says nothing. And then he said, oh, when it came to the backup tapes in the later testimony, that they were all destroyed. Some of them weren't. Some of them were. So he had a duty to testify accurately, duty to correct the record. And it seems to me when we're talking about executive overreach, one of the things the legislative branch can do is impeach this guy. I mean, that's the record. Now, we can add to it. Let me do one other, if I could, Mr. Chairman, one other area that. You familiar with Stingray technology, Ms. Mitchell?
A little bit. I'm conversant.
So Stingray technology, my understanding is this is the capability that certain law enforcement and, in this case, the Internal Revenue Service has to bring this technology into an area and find geolocation technology. What happens is this device mimics a cell phone tower, and all the cell phone numbers in that area they can find out where you're at, your number, and collect. It's a net. It's not a fishing line. It's a fishing net. Last week, testimony in this committee, we learned that the IRS has employed this technology 37 times, and each time did it without a probable cause warrant. You think that's appropriate for the agency with the track record we now know that they have relative to conservative groups is employing this kind of technology without a probable cause warrant?
Absolutely not, and that's why I think that that Congress needs to establish an individual cause of action to be for individuals whose, in the cases that I've been talking about, where First Amendment rights were violated. If your Fourth Amendment rights are being violated by the IRS and by individual IRS agents and employees, you ought to have the ability to file a lawsuit and get damages. We have to find ways to hold the individual people accountable for violating the constitutional rights of the American people. And if Congress doesn't do that, we're never going to get control of them.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I thought I was but I see my time has expired. Thank you.
Gentleman return.